All right, now we got a fascinating guest for you guys. His name is John Dennis. Guess what? He's the Republican candidate running against Nancy Pelosi. Interesting. John, welcome to the Young Turks.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, great to have you on here. Now, John's a Republican, but he's not your standard run-of-the-mill Republican, that's for sure. John, tell me some of your views, some of your libertarian views that might surprise our audience.
Okay, I'll just pretend all of you are liberals from San Francisco, and I'll tell you the things that might surprise you. I'm a pro-civil liberties Republican who wants to repeal or at least rescind the worst parts of the Patriot Act. I would like to see us unwind our episodes for good in Afghanistan and Iraq, and I'm for legalization of marijuana. How's that?
Yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty good. Now we're having fun. How about don't ask, don't tell?
Yeah, I think we should repeal that.
All right, and so John Dennis, Democrat for office in no, you're still a Republican. So John, it turns out I agree with you on that stuff, and I like where you're coming from. Now, of course, it's a fairly progressive district where you're from anyway, but I didn't realize there was any Republicans that were allowed to be outside of the exact party line. So it's refreshing to hear that you are. But talk to me about why you are a Republican. What are the things? What are the reasons you call yourself a Republican and things we might disagree on other issues? Yeah,
sure. Well, I mean, I've been a Republican for 25 years. I find myself in the liberty wing of the Republican Party, and some names I think are associated with that are Barry Goldwater, Robert Taft, Ron Paul, Warren Buffett's father, Howard Buffett. It's sort of the old right of the party. There's still a wing of it. The word liberty is used in the preamble of the Republican Party platform, and it doesn't show up until page 69 in the Democratic Party platform. So there actually is a liberty wing in the Republican Party, but I don't really see an active one in the Democratic Party.
All right, but of course, look, John, I'm always amused by stuff like that. Are we against liberty as progressives? Of course not. When is apple pie mentioned in the Republican platform? Huh? Not till page 89. So the real question is, what do you mean by liberty? That's the real question.
Well, yeah, that's a good question because I think that the traditional, typical, two-dimensional left-right political spectrum always has someone compromising something in terms of individual liberty. I think that there's no need to compromise, and that if you do, that ultimately you end up with losing all your liberties. So, for example, the right typically compromises on its civil liberties and social liberties in favor of economic freedom, and on the left you tend to sacrifice economic freedom for social and civil liberties. And I think freedom goes across the board for social and civil and economic liberties.
All right, but John, we got to flesh it out because, sure, I'm for economic freedom. Okay, but again, what does that mean? I mean, if you mean, hey, am I allowed to start any company I like, for example, the Young Turks, obviously I'm 100% on board. If you mean, hey, let's not regulate any companies and hope that everything works out, then I'm definitely not on board.
Right. I think where I maybe we differ, I don't know, but the way I look at it is that people shouldn't be compelled to do things that other people think they should do with their resources, and that's where I think where progressives and libertarians.
Let's start to get more specific. So, what do you mean by that? Give me a policy that you're in favor of or against based on that.
Let's see. Let me think about this.
All right.
Anything? Again, throw something out. It's usually
I'll throw something at you. Let's see. For example, Wall Street regulation. Right? We did financial reform. I think it was weak sauce. I would have regulated far more. Not because I like big government, not because I would like to deny them economic freedom, but because if you let them take these huge risks with the depositors' money, they're going to blow it up again, and then we're going to have, we bailed them out the first time, and it'll be next time perhaps economic disaster. So I want to regulate. I want to have cops on the street, in this case Wall Street, to make sure that they're not breaking the law or taking inordinate risk, which is going to put us in danger. Now, do you agree with that or no?
Well, I mean, the banking system is a bad example just because it's a cartel. It's a government-protected cartel that is not a free market. There's no free market in money. You have legal tender laws that prevent you from effectively competing with Federal Reserve notes and the existing credit markets. And by the way, I think that in some ways you're right, though. If we're going to have this cartel system, then those financial regulations didn't go far enough because they excluded Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and the Federal Reserve. I mean, what kind of reforms are we talking about?
Well, look, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are a disaster. I agree with you guys. Please don't think that was the heart of the problem. The heart of the problem is people like Angelo Mozillo at Countrywide, who made $577 million by selling crap mortgages that he knew were going to go into foreclosure because of exploding debt. And that didn't have anything to do with Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. It just had to do with him abusing the system. That's why I want more cops policing the street.
I think, I was going to just say that. Well, I mean, Fannie and Freddie though are the classic government intervention in the marketplace. They create a market where the private market ought to exist. And so I'd be happy to discuss that, but I'd be really disappointed if we didn't throw the Federal Reserve in the mix, because the Federal Reserve is what creates the boom and the bust cycle. By artificially setting interest rates, which no supercomputer, no committee, certainly no individual person knows how to set, they invariably set them too low and then start this cycle of boom that when we get to the end of it, we realize we don't have the resources in the economy to fill out the projects that have all been started, and then we have the corresponding bust. So we have these huge boom bust swings that destroy wealth. And if you're not going to, if you're going to have a financial regulation, reform, and don't include the Federal Reserve, in fact, give the Federal Reserve more power, then it's really not very serious.
I couldn't agree more with you, and that's why I'm enjoying this conversation, because I think I'm getting a sense from you that there's of course things we disagree on, and significantly so perhaps, but that you're ideologically consistent as a libertarian. The libertarian position should definitely be for, at the very least, auditing the Fed, as Ron Paul has pushed for, and Alan Grayson has pushed for, and successfully so. So I'm with you on the Fed. I'm with you on Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. But don't think that these Wall Street guys got suckered into making billions of dollars that, golly gee willikers, they didn't want to make, but the government made them do it. That's not what happened.
By the way, why don't we see more of them going to jail? I mean, they clearly committed huge amounts of fraud. They knew what they were doing, and nobody cared because they were all getting their commissions and living the better life. I agree with you. That business should be. They should have gone after more people. But aside from a few sacrificial lambs, the banking business continues as usual. And we haven't seen, I don't think, any significant reform. But I think what we have seen is when you have a bill that has 2,300 pages, which nobody and his brother read, that that you've got unintended consequences, which are going to hurt, I think, average people over the long term, and that concerns me quite a bit. All
right, we're talking to John Dennis. He's the Republican candidate running against Nancy Pelosi in California's 8th district. And so far, we agree on, I think, at least 80% of stuff. So it's a fascinating conversation. All right, let me try something else here. Tax rates. Right now, they are proportionally to the nation's income. They're at historic lows. The last time they were this low was, and the share of the nation's wealth that the top 1% had was this high, both categories, was in the late 1920s. Okay. Now, I think that the highest marginal tax rate should be higher, at least at the Clinton levels of 39.6. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, by the way, I love how we're trying to find a fight. We're working our way through it to get to some disagreement. Well, actually, we might have found it here. Here's my thing, Chuck. I think that a dollar in the private sector is actually has a multiplier and actually grows wealth. A dollar in the public sector doesn't. So we should have a bias towards keeping as much money in the hands of the people at the expense of the government as much as possible. Now, the way we go about doing it is another discussion entirely. But I think that we the federal government has a history, in particular, of not managing money terribly well, wasting it, and doing things that they ought not to. So I just as soon actually start reducing the size of the government in general and keeping more money in people's hands.
Now, but John, that's a really easy thing to say, but how do you actually reduce the size of the government? Because if you said to me, hey, you know what, I'm going to keep taxes where they are, but I'm going to balance the budget, and here's my realistic plan for it. For example, I'm going to cut defense spending drastically because we spend more than the rest of the world combined, and it's madness, and it's mainly going to engorge the defense contractors, then I'm with you. But if you say I'm going to cut what programs, so that's what I'm curious about. How would you balance the budget?
I have to tell you something. Maybe it's because I have the luxury of running in a district that's very liberal, so I get to say what I want. But I love watching these politicians, and I have to say mostly on the Republican side, not answer a single question about what they would cut. And I'd be happy to do that if you'd like to hear.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so first and foremost, let's end the war in Afghanistan, and let's actually really seriously remove the rest of those troops from Iraq. There are 50,000 supposedly non-combat troops running around armed to the teeth in Iraq, not to mention the 100,000 or so or plus contractors that we're employing there. So we could save next year. We're penciled in to spend $140 billion in Afghanistan. So we could save that money. Another area we could spend money, where we could save money, is in the 700 plus bases in 130 countries around the world. Why do we need to be in Zambia? Why do we need to be in Crete? If the Cretans attack us, won't we see them coming? So I mean, we have all of this sort of spending. We have corporate welfare. Let's get all these subsidies, agricultural subsidies, subsidies to indirect subsidies to all sorts of corporations, to the oil business. Let's take a sharp knife to all that stuff. But I have to say something. You really hit on something important. If the Republicans, my party, doesn't bring this stuff to the table, then they're not serious about cutting government spending, because the Democrats will never bring the things that we need to do over the long term, like long-term entitlement reform, which we obviously have to do. They'll never bring that to the table if the Republicans won't bring their sacred cows to the table as well.
John, I got to give you a lot of credit, man. It's been a long time since I've talked to a thoughtful Republican that's ideologically consistent and has a good proposal. And you're running against Nancy Pelosi, which of course is a tough fight. And I'd love to see a debate between you guys, and because I'm not sure who I'd vote for, honestly. But apparently that's not going to happen, is it?
I don't know. I think if your audience, sends a message to Ms. Pelosi, gets the word out that she should debate me. What are we talking about? We're talking about 60, 90 minutes in her district. Maybe the first time in 23 years that she's, got to spend a little time answering to her constituents and to her opponent. Would that kill her? Would that be such a huge burden?
But you know why she's not doing it, John? Because she's way ahead in the polls. She's the House Majority Leader. She thinks, why risk it? I mean, you get it. Of course, it's not good for you, but you get it.
The truth is that we'll do fine. We'll do what we're going to do. And if she doesn't engage, we just get to continue to define the debate and do pretty well so far. It looks like our polls are moving up pretty quickly. But, you mentioned Ron Paul earlier. Ron Paul won his Republican primary with 80% of the vote. And yet he spent the time in his district and did one debate with the three not terribly serious guys running against him. And he did it for the right reasons, because it's what you should do. And Nancy Pelosi certainly owes this district, which has treated her extraordinarily well, at least that one dignity.
John, I will certainly give you this. The country would be a hell of a lot better off if there were more Republicans like you. Thank you so much for joining us on the Young Turks. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Bye now.
All right.